Starfleet tells the galaxy it isn't a military. Captains insist they are explorers, scientists, and diplomats, not soldiers. Jean-Luc Picard once said exactly that, framing Starfleet as a peaceful organization devoted to discovery, not conquest. On the surface, it's a convincing image. After all, combat is the minor purview of a captain. Starfleet ships are named after scientists and cities. Their crews wear bright uniforms, and they spend as much time cataloging nebula as they do confronting hostile powers. To most of the Federation's citizens, Starfleet symbolizes hope, curiosity, and unity. But that image cracks the moment the Federation is threatened. When the Borg advanced on Earth, Starfleet didn't send negotiators. It deployed an armada. During the Dominion War, hundreds of ships fought across star systems, and thousands of Starfleet officers died in brutal, prolonged campaigns. These were not minor security skirmishes or exploratory mishaps. They were full-scale wars. Admirals planned invasions, captains commanded fleets, and officers fought and bled like any soldier would. Starfleet has always lived with this contradiction. It preaches peace, yet trains for war. Denies being a military, while wielding the power of one. This contradiction isn't accidental. It's carefully maintained, because admitting the truth would shatter the Federation's image as a benevolent society. The Federation can claim moral superiority precisely because it hides the steel beneath the velvet. Starfleet is a paradox by design. It must be gentle enough to win the trust of new civilizations, yet powerful enough to destroy anyone who threatens them. The duality has allowed the Federation to survive, but it has also blurred the truth of what Starfleet really is. Beneath its humanitarian image, Starfleet is structured around one central reality. It is a navy. Everything about its organization reflects this. Starfleet uses naval ranks: ensigns, lieutenants, commanders, captains, commodores, admirals. And those ranks are tied to operational authority. Captains are sovereign commanders of their ships. Admirals oversee fleets, sectors, and theaters of war. These aren't ceremonial positions. They hold legal and strategic power. This becomes undeniable in wartime. During the Dominion War, Starfleet deployed numbered fleets: 2nd, 5th, 7th, 9th, exactly like real-world naval forces. Admirals Ross, Nechayev, and Hayes coordinated campaigns that involved hundreds of starships, planning logistics, assigning task forces, and orchestrating simultaneous offenses. Battles like the First Chintaka Assault weren't heroic one-offs. They were complex naval operations. Starfleet ships themselves are designed and crewed like naval vessels. Each starship functions as a self-contained command with its own chain of authority. A captain, executive officer, operations chiefs, tactical officer, helmsman, engineers, medical officers, and a complement of other crew. They can operate autonomously for years, patrol borders, enforce treaties, and, if ordered, conduct planetary assaults or blockade enemy space. The captain's authority is absolute while underway. They can arrest officers, invoke martial law, and even launch strategic weapons if communications are cut. This level of command autonomy is a naval tradition carried directly into Starfleet's starships. Even Starfleet's cultural rituals reflect this identity. Officers serve tours of duty. Ships are commissioned. Crews refer to their vessels as she, and service aboard them carries the same prestige and burden once reserved for historic warships. Starfleet's starships are not just vehicles, they are national symbols, each one carrying the Federation flag into deep space. Every other branch of Starfleet exists to support this navy. Security personnel guard it. Fighter pilots shield it. Scientists and engineers build its weapons and warp cores. Medical officers keep its crews alive, but none of them can project power on their own. It is the starship fleet that patrols the border, answers distress calls, and defends the Federation when diplomacy fails. When people imagine the Federation, and indeed Starfleet, they picture starships. That is no accident. Starfleet's Navy is not just its core branch. It is the instrument through which the Federation survives. If Starfleet's starships are its sword, then its security forces are the hand gripping it. Every vessel carries a detachment of Starfleet security personnel. Officers trained to protect the ship, defend the crew, and respond with force when diplomacy fails. They are rarely celebrated, seldom seen on the bridge, and almost never at the negotiating table. Yet they are the first ones to draw phasers when things go wrong, and the last ones still standing when the shields fail. Security officers are Starfleet's closest equivalent to Marines. They don't command ships or chart new worlds. Their mission is singular: to protect Starfleet's assets and personnel, by force if necessary. On starships, they serve under a chief of security, leading armed response teams to repel boarders, secure critical systems, and accompany away teams into hostile territory. On space stations and starbases, they function as a dedicated garrison force, patrolling corridors, running tactical drills, and operating detention facilities. They train in phaser combat, hand-to-hand techniques, and boarding actions. While most of Starfleet's officers study stellar cartography or warp mechanics, security cadets spend their academy years in combat simulations. Their presence is so routine that it's easy to forget. Starfleet vessels are armed not just with photon torpedoes, but with soldiers. And when the war comes, they're the first to step off the deck and into the mud. During the Dominion War, Starfleet deployed security personnel as a frontline infantry. The siege of AR-558 shows some of them entrenched on a remote world, holding a vital communications relay under constant attack. To be fair, the defenders weren't just security officers. They were engineers, operations staff, and scientists. Ordinary Starfleet personnel forced to become soldiers. Security officers were trained for this, but most of their comrades weren't, and they paid the price. Federation regulations said combat tours shouldn't last more than 90 days, but the siege stretched on for months. Starfleet called them soldiers outright, and they fought and died as such. Even their uniforms marked them as outsiders within Starfleet's hierarchy. Security wears gold, not command red, and as Michael Eddington once said, you don't get to be a captain wearing a gold uniform. That wasn't just bitterness, it was truth. Security officers can't rise to Starship Command through their own branch. They protect the people who explore, but they don't get to lead them. This imbalance is nothing new. Even before the Federation existed, Earth's early Starfleet relied on the Military Assault Command Operations, the MACOs. They were professional soldiers, a separate military brought aboard the Enterprise NX-01 during the Xindi crisis. Under Major Hayes, the MACOs conducted boarding missions, guarded critical decks, and fought in close quarters. When the Federation was formed, the MACOs were dissolved and absorbed into Starfleet. The uniforms changed, but their doctrine became the foundation of modern security. Occasionally, we do glimpse even rarer ground combat specialists, like Colonel West in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. His Army-style rank and Black Ops planning session imply the existence of hidden military units within Starfleet, remnants of an era when infantry had more prominence. They appear only in shadows, but they do exist. Despite all this, security has no independence. It does not command fleets, draft strategy, or dictate policy. It exists entirely to serve the Navy, riding aboard its ships and fighting only where captains send them. Their job is not to conquer worlds. It is to make sure the officers who explore them come home alive. They are Starfleet's silent soldiers, unnamed, unseen, but always ready. And without them, no starship would last a day. Starfleet's war machine isn't made only of capital ships. In the shadows of its cruisers and dreadnoughts, there exists a much smaller and easily overlooked element: its starfighter corps. They don't wear distinct uniforms. They don't have their own admirals. But when Starfleet goes to war, these pilots become its fastest and most disposable weapon. During the Dominion War, they were everywhere. In the retaking of Deep Space Nine, Starfleet launched waves of small attack fighters to pierce Cardassian formations. In Sacrifice of Angels, 8 successive squadrons dive into Jem'Hadar lines like hornets, breaking enemy ranks so the larger ships could follow through. These 1- or 2-person craft, often called Federation attack fighters, are small, fast, and lightly armed with phasers and micro-torpedoes. Their job isn't to win battles alone. It's to overwhelm, disrupt, and harass long enough for the big ships to deliver the killing blow. Like before, this isn't new. The same Peregrine-class design used in the Dominion War had already appeared as training craft at Starfleet Academy, flown by cadet flight teams like the one featured in The First Duty. Starfleet has always cross-trained its officers in small craft operations, producing not just starship helmsmen, but dedicated combat pilots when needed. The difference is that in peacetime, these pilots fly shuttles and runabouts. In wartime, they become Starfleet's fighter wing. It is the closest thing Starfleet has to an air force. But unlike the Navy's massive fleets, this air wing is ad hoc and temporary. There is no fighter corps, no standing squadrons stationed on carriers. Starfleet only deploys fighters in the moments of total war, and when the war ends, they vanish back into the hangars. Their craft are often modified courier ships or stripped-down runabouts. Even at their peak in the Dominion War, they never operated independently. They flew from starbases and ship tenders, always under the command of a fleet admiral or starship captain. Their existence reflects Starfleet's priorities. Fighters are tactical assets, not strategic ones. They can sting, but they can't conquer. They can buy time, but they can't hold territory. Starfleet only invests in them when it must, because fighters represent the one thing Starfleet tries not to be: expendable. Still, they matter. In the thick of battle, fighters can turn the tide. They dart through shield gaps, draw enemy fire, and sow chaos among larger formations. They give Starfleet flexibility, something the lumbering cruisers can't always provide. Even the Klingons and Romulans have learned to respect them. During the final Dominion offensive, Klingon commanders insisted Starfleet's fighter squadrons lead their joint assault waves, clearing Jem'Hadar ships for the main fleets to punch through. Yet these pilots are almost invisible in Starfleet's hierarchy. They carry officers' ranks, wear gold or red, and report to whatever ship or base happens to be hosting them. They leave no legacy, no monuments, no starship named in their honor. They are a weapon Starfleet summons when the sky is falling, and quietly shelves again once the crisis has passed. They are the fleet's hidden air wing, fast, fearless, and forgotten. Starfleet doesn't want to need them, but when war erupts, it always does. If the Navy is Starfleet's muscle, the science and engineering branches are its mind and its memory. Long before Starfleet was a fleet of warships, it was a fleet of scientists. The Federation chartered it to seek out new life and new civilizations. That mandate gave rise to a sprawling network of researchers, technicians, and innovators, all who form the backbone of Starfleet's R&D capability. They are not warriors. Most never fire a phaser in anger, but their work decides whether Starfleet survives its wars or vanishes in them. Every starship carries a science division, led by a chief science officer. On the original Enterprise, that was Spock. On DS9, it was Jadzia Dax. These officers command teams of exobiologists, astrophysicists, stellar cartographers, and xenotechnologists. all who analyze anomalies and develop countermeasures on the fly. They are Starfleet's forward-facing research corps, studying the unknown so others can survive it. But behind them stands something even larger, the Starfleet Corps of Engineers. The SCE is rarely seen, but constantly felt. It builds the infrastructure that makes the Federation possible. Star bases, warp relays, planetary power grids, and the starships themselves. In Star Trek II, it was the Corps of Engineers who constructed the Genesis Research Facility at Regula 1. In DS9, we can see the genius of Chief O'Brien. And in Voyager's alternate future episode, Timeless, Harry Kim works as a design specialist for the Corps of Engineers, advancing warp theory. They are Starfleet's quiet architects, building miracles in the shadows, turning rocks into replicators. Sometimes, those miracles become weapons. When the Borg threatened the Federation, Starfleet ordered the Corps to design its first true warship, the Defiant class. Built to outgun Borg cubes, it was small, overpowered, and stripped of creature comforts, a gun with a warp core. The Prometheus class, developed later, was even more radical, an experimental multi-vector assault vessel that could split into 3 independent sections during battle. These designs emerge from the same R&D pipeline that builds exploration cruisers, proving how easily Starfleet's scientific engine can pivot to war. Even its most controversial projects began here. The Genesis device was a Federation science initiative, but it was Starfleet engineers who built the facility, maintained the torpedo casing, and conducted the simulations. In TNG's The Pegasus, Starfleet's R&D division covertly developed a phasing cloak device in violation of the Treaty of Algernon. The work was done in secret labs, hidden even from most of the Admiralty. Starfleet's R&D machine can be idealistic or reckless, but never powerless. It is also deeply interwoven with the Federation's civilian scientific institutions. The Daystrom Institute regularly collaborates with Starfleet officers, most famously Commander Bruce Maddox's research on artificial life. Starfleet even sends its own officers to work at Daystrom and return with new breakthroughs. When Starfleet rolls out new warp core designs, upgraded shields, or quantum torpedoes, they usually began as classified experiments in a Daystrom or Utopia Planitia testbed. This constant innovation gives Starfleet its edge. Its ships are not the fastest or the strongest in the quadrant, but they are the most adaptable, because Starfleet's scientists and engineers can rewire an entire starship on a week's notice. They are the difference between a standard crew and a victorious fleet. They are why Starfleet survives first contact with the impossible. They are not soldiers, but they win wars all the same. They are the minds behind the machines, and without them, the fleet would be nothing more than empty hulls drifting through space. Starfleet can survive without diplomats. It can even survive without scientists. But without its medics, it dies. Behind the gleaming bridges and warp cores, Starfleet sustains a sprawling medical apparatus, the Starfleet Medical Division. It is more than just shipboard doctors and sick bays. It is a dedicated branch of Starfleet tasked with keeping the entire fleet alive, training medical personnel, setting standards for care, and spearheading medical research across hundreds of worlds. Starfleet Medical rarely takes center stage, but its presence is everywhere. Every starship carries at least one chief medical officer and a small staff of nurses, orderlies, and specialists. These officers don't just patch up phaser burns. They handle everything from first contact with alien biology to managing outbreaks of unknown diseases. The original Enterprise saw Dr. McCoy improvising treatments for countless species never before encountered. The Voyager crew survived the Delta Quadrant largely because the EMH had access to Starfleet's medical database, treating conditions no one had seen in centuries. Starfleet doesn't treat these doctors as just support staff. They are formally commissioned officers who can override a captain's orders on medical grounds. In TNG's The Lonely Among Us, Dr. Crusher points out that a medical officer has the legal authority to relieve any commanding officer deemed medically unfit. This is extraordinary power, and it exists because Starfleet knows how fragile its crews really are. But Starfleet Medical's reach goes far beyond individual ships. It also runs its own facilities and academies to train doctors, field medics, and medical researchers. Between the events of TNG's third and fourth seasons, Dr. Crusher left the Enterprise to serve as the head of Starfleet Medical on Earth, overseeing its training and research arms. The single posting demonstrates its scale, a centralized medical institution spanning the entire Federation, staffed entirely by Starfleet officers. In wartime, this quiet branch becomes indispensable. During the Dominion War, Starfleet Medical coordinated mass casualty treatment across the dozens of sectors, worked on vaccines for engineered plagues, and researched countermeasures for biological weapons. These weren't isolated acts of heroism. They were examples of Starfleet Medical functioning as a military medical corps, mobilizing labs and hospital ships as a part of the war effort. They are also a research powerhouse in their own right. Starfleet Medical oversees all medical research within Starfleet, requiring clearance for any new treatment or genetic therapy. They develop immunizations for crews deploying to new regions of space, research cybernetic integration, and maintain protocols for medical ethics. In practice, they are Starfleet's equivalent of a Surgeon General's office, a field hospital corps, and a research institute, all in one. Starfleet can replace ships. It cannot replace people. And that is why Starfleet Medical holds such unusual authority inside the hierarchy. Its officers outrank line command on medical matters. Its standards shape the health of entire fleets, and its breakthroughs decide who lives to see the next mission. They don't fire phasers. They don't win battles. But they make sure someone is still alive who can. They are the healing arm of Starfleet, and without them, the Federation's Great Navy would be nothing but empty ships crewed by ghosts. For all its optimism, Starfleet knows one thing. You can't survive the unknown if you can't see it coming. That's why, buried within Starfleet's hierarchy, there exists a branch most citizens never see and few officers ever meet: Starfleet Intelligence. Unlike Section 31, Intelligence is not a rogue outfit. It is an official division of Starfleet, reporting directly to Starfleet Command. But it is built on secrecy, operating from classified facilities, and running covert missions throughout the Alpha Quadrant. Their job is to find threats before they reach the fleet, and quietly eliminate those threats if possible. We rarely see them, but they are always there in the background. In The Search, Part 1, it is Starfleet Intelligence that briefs Sisko's crew on the Dominion threat. In Homefront and Paradise Lost, their analysis warns the Federation Council about possible changeling infiltration on Earth. Admiral Ross relies on their briefings during the Dominion War, sharing intelligence with Sisko in the wardroom of DS9. Their fingerprints are on almost every major strategic decision Starfleet makes. Never visible, always present. Starfleet Intelligence is not the organization so much as a network. Its officers are embedded across the fleet, tucked away in logistics, security, operations, and even science postings. Some serve openly in intelligence liaison roles. Others operate under deep cover, never identifying themselves as agents unless they must. When intelligence officers appear on screen, they're usually shadowy figures in civilian clothes, armed with data more dangerous than any weapon. Their work is broad and often invisible. They handle counter-espionage against the Romulan Tal Shiar and Klingon Imperial intelligence. They run listening posts along the Federation border, intercepting communications and tracking fleet movements. They maintain threat dossiers on hostile powers, cataloging ship classes, weapons loadouts, and military doctrine. They walk a careful line. Starfleet Intelligence is still bound by regulations and oversight from Starfleet Command. They need authorization for assassinations, biological warfare, or treaty violations. When they break rules, they answer for it. That makes them very different from Section 31, which exists outside the law entirely. Intelligence bends the rules. Section 31 ignores them. Even within Starfleet, intelligence is feared and resented. Yet Starfleet can't function without them. Intelligence prevents wars that starships would never survive. They are the reason the Federation rarely walks blind into an ambush. They are why fleets arrive at the right coordinates, at the right time, and with the right weapons. Without them, Starfleet's vast navy would be powerful, but blind. They are the eyes in the dark, and they see everything the rest of Starfleet hopes it never has to. Starfleet is most often described as a single, unified force. One fleet, one mission, one purpose. But that's a myth. Beneath its polished surface, Starfleet is a patchwork of specialized branches. Security to guard it, scientists and engineers to build its ships, medics to preserve its people, intelligence officers to hunt threats. That patchwork is real, but by the 24th century, it is no longer balanced. The command division, the Navy, has quietly absorbed the others. Every major decision now flows through captains and admirals. Science officers still make discoveries, but they do so under a captain's orders. Security officers still fight, but never command. Medical staff still save lives, but cannot shape missions. Intelligence officers whisper from the shadows, yet depend on admirals to act on their warnings. Starfleet still looks like a web of equals, but it behaves like a navy. Its ranks, fleets, sector commands, and task forces dominate the structure. The other branches survive as specialized tools, but it is the Admiralty that decides when, where, and whether those tools are used. Even political oversight has eroded in practice. The Federation Council and Diplomatic Corps can still override Starfleet on paper, but they rarely do. Outside of major crisis, they stay hands-off, trusting the Admiralty to manage day-to-day policy. In the vacuum left by civilian inattention, the Navy has filled the gap. Starfleet's captains no longer just execute missions, they define them. The Admiralty no longer just responds to policy, they shape it. Starfleet is no longer a coalition of equal branches. It is a naval empire wrapped in the language of exploration. Its other divisions exist to serve it, sustain it, and justify it. And they all know it. Yet this centralization hasn't erased Starfleet's paradox. It still calls itself peaceful while building warships. It still speaks of exploration while planning campaigns. It still trains scientists, doctors, and idealists, then places them under the command of hardened officers who must be ready to kill. Starfleet's strength no longer comes from balance. It comes from the unity enforced by hierarchy. The Navy commands, the rest comply, and if the Federation survives, it will be because its captains, and the system that forged them, continue to wield that power in the name of something better than power itself. Starfleet is powerful not because it is harmonious. It is powerful because the Navy made it so.